The Hittites began depicting stories in their pottery almost 1,000 years before Western cultures. Hittite vases, with their strong narratives, remain the greatest visual source of information about Hittite society.
The Hittite ceramics can be classified in two categories: those used in the daily life and homes, and those used in the religious ceremonies. This second group is made up of large vases decorated with beautiful reliefs. They are called the relief vases. With 2 or 4 friezes containing colored reliefs, they depict religious ceremonies or sacred marriages. These relief vases not only give us detailed information about Hittite rituals, acrobats, and music, but also form an excellent precursor and companion to Hittite rock reliefs with similar depictions. These vases are probably the most important achievement of Hittite art of the period.
The influence of Hittian culture was nowhere greater than in Hittite religion. Hittian gods and myths formed the foundation of Hittite theology.
The Hittites took a lot of things that we would consider natural phenomena and considered them manifestations of a particular god. So their religion, we would say, is polytheistic, and it was naturalistic. They had a high regard for the environment, the world around them, because it was sacred, because the gods themselves were a part of it. And their behavior, not only in the temples, but in daily life, had to reflect that same regard and reverence for all of life, which was to them religious.
The storm god and the sun goddess, the divine couple, presided over a complex pantheon of gods linked with everything from war to agriculture. The gods were human in character. They could deceive, laugh, and make love, but they were immortal. In Hittite belief, gods depended on humans for offerings and devotion, while humans relied on their gods for comfort and wealth. Pleasing the gods ensured a good harvest and even military success. But neglecting or offending the gods brought upon the people the direst punishment, sometimes extending into the afterlife.
The portrait of the afterlife is extremely pessimistic. The netherworld was cold and dark, and the poor dead eat only mud and drink dirty waters.
The cause of the god's wrath could only be discerned with complex oracles. Anything from examining the entrails of an animal or the flight pattern of birds could help elicit information from the gods. Some tablets even contain diagrams of migratory paths for future reference. Once the oracles revealed the reason, the god's anger could only be appeased with rituals and offerings. Many Hittite tablets contain strict instructions for rituals.
From the texts, the Hittites emerge as a very religious and pious people. But on the other hand, they never lost reality or practicality out of sight. For example, when a king had to conduct a ritual to solve, say, a medical problem, he would have to send a bull hundreds of miles away. He would lay his hand on it, and the evil would flow from him into the bull, and the bull would have to be adorned with ribbons, etc. But then at the end, the text says, well, it's a long journey. If the bull dies on the way, just take a new one, put all the stuff of the dead bull on him, and bring that one to it.
The Hittites developed their religion by absorbing and embracing the gods of all the lands they conquered. New deities and temples were constantly added to the Hittite religious realm.
The Hittites themselves probably originally had a smaller nucleus of gods. But as they met various peoples in and around Anatolia, or as they campaigned in Syria and encountered the gods of other peoples, they had an inherent respect for these gods and wanted to have those gods on their side, not enemies against them. And for this reason, they would incorporate the worship of those gods in their own pantheon with regular sacrifices.
With this assimilation, Hittite religion expanded its influence far to the west. shaping the religions of many lands. In time, the Hittite storm god would evolve into the Greek Zeus and the Roman Jupiter. In the end, the Hittite pantheon would become so complex that the Hittites would be called people of 1,000 gods. At the center of Hittite religion stood the king. His most important duty was his role as the chief priest of the land. He was the conduit between the gods and their subjects.
On the one hand, he represented the human community before the gods and requested from the divine fertility for crops, victory for Hittite armies, and such things. On the other hand, he was answerable to the gods for the conduct of his human subjects.
Another way a king could describe himself was as the adopted child of a god, that is, adopted, since the king was clearly believed to be a mortal at birth, born from a mortal father and mother, and at birth he would be adopted by the gods. It was only at death that the king became a god. A son, a royal son, would never say of his father, "when my father died." He would always say, "when my father became a god."